everybody, it's Miss Peachy again from WCA Biology 8, and I'm just here to kind of show you a couple of, well, kind of one other type of inheritance we didn't have a chance to talk about. And I was going through the lessons and realized that either I missed this or it wasn't included in the lesson. And I wanted to make sure that you did know this because it will show up on your test. So it's something that you do need to know, plus it's super important in biology, so it's important to understand as well. And that's a type of inheritance pattern called X-linked inheritance, also known as sex-linked inheritance. So as the name suggests, this is linked to the X chromosome, or it's dependent upon sex, whether or not you're male or female. So let's delve a little bit into what makes genetically a male and genetically a female. I think we talked about this a little bit already. So a female has two X chromosomes and a male has an X and a Y chromosome. So remember that human beings have 23 pairs of chromosomes. The first 22 are for everything else in the body, and the last set, the 23rd pair of chromosomes, determines sex, and it's responsible for sex characteristics and stuff like that, differences between males and females. A female will inherit a copy of an X chromosome from her mother, and then she also inherits the X chromosome from her father. So that determines that she's female. A male will inherit the X chromosome from his mother and then the Y from his father. So a female, since we are XX, we can only ever donate X chromosomes to our offsprings. Since males have one of each copy, they can donate either or. So it's always the male that determines whether or not the offspring is male or female. But look at the differences between the two chromosomes. The X chromosome here is way bigger than the Y chromosome. This is the Y, this little guy right there. So the Y chromosome is quite small. So as you can imagine, being smaller in space, there's fewer genes on the Y chromosome. And it's largely responsible, again, for sex characteristics, but a lot of other genes are carried on the X chromosome that aren't found on the Y chromosome. And so this leads to a pattern of inheritance called X-linked. And X-linked conditions affect males way more than females simply because they only have one copy of the X chromosome. An example that is often given is hemophilia. And I did remember reading about hemophilia in the lesson as well, so it's given as an example as well. So hemophilia is found way more frequently in males than females. And what hemophilia does is it actually reduces the body's ability to clot. So when you're injured, your blood doesn't clot very well. And so a simple cut can lead to bleeding to death. It's really not a very nice disease at all. Not that there are a lot of nice diseases out there, but it's actually a pretty bad one. So hemophilia is a recessive condition. Remember that recessive means that you have to have two copies of the recessive allele in order to inherit this particular condition, to have it show, to have it actually be something that you're affected with. Well, that's true for females. For males, you only need one copy, and that is because the gene for hemophilia is found on the X chromosome and not the Y. So if you are a female, and let's say that normal blood clotting we'll put as a capital C. I don't like using C's because C's look very similar when they're small and they're big. But let's say it's big C is normal blood clotting. And we can find that on one of our X chromosomes. That's normal. And then the allele for hemophilia, let's call it lowercase c. And I'm going to draw it like that. Well, this particular female here, she has the allele for hemophilia, but since she has the normal one, it doesn't matter. She's still going to have normal blood clotting, even though she has the allele for hemophilia. It's being masked by the dominant allele. We call this female here a carrier. So a carrier is somebody who has the allele, but is not doesn't have the phenotype. They aren't expressing that allele because they have another dominant allele that is going to mask it. In the case of X-linked traits, only females can be carriers. Males cannot be carriers. Okay. If you are a male, you have an X and a Y chromosome. Well, unfortunately, your Y chromosome doesn't do squat for you here. So if you have the allele for hemophilia, you have the disease. There's no dominant allele on your other chromosome that's going to mask it. You automatically have it. So this person here is afflicted. Maybe two F's in afflicted. Yeah, I think there are. Okay. That person has it. So as long as they have the allele, they are automatically afflicted with the disease. So as you can see, in order for a female to have hemophilia, she would have to have two alleles for that trait. And the only way that would happen is if her father had it, because that's the only way that she'd be able to get it. So her father would actually have to have the disease. They would pretty much know. And then her mother would have to have been a carrier, and then she could be affected with it. All right, so then what we can do is we can use a tool called a pedigree to be able to kind of trace this through many, many generations. Pedigree is kind of like a fancy family tree. And we didn't really learn about pedigrees at all, and I'm not going to get into a lot of details with this because it wasn't in your lessons. But like this is the different symbols for the pedigree. A square is male, a circle is female. If they're joined with a line, that means they're mating or they had children together. Or we say they're married, but it's not technically true anymore. They don't have to be married. And then if there's a line that comes down like this here, right? And there's symbols below it, those are parents, or they have children, so those are parents of children. And that it goes in order of birth from left to right. If a person is afflicted or affected, then they have their symbol is completely colored in. If they're carriers, it's half. Now this is showing that some of them, we have males and females, but you have to remember that this is true for X-linked traits that are recessive. So there are other traits that are not X-linked that might be regular dominance and recessiveness that we still use pedigrees for. So we still have symbols for carriers, even though we're specifically talking about X-linked right now. Okay, so when we look at this chart here, this is showing a royal family, Queen of England, all our descendants. And as we see, we like to look at royal families because, again, they like to marry within the family to be able to preserve the bloodlines, which means that a lot of cousins are marrying each other, which means you tend to see more of that disease kind of being carried from generation to generation. What you're going to notice is a lot of squares that are colored in, and these are males within the family tree that have hemophilia. And then you can trace that back to their mother, who was generally a carrier. So we have the Queen Victoria of England here was a carrier, and she had a son, Leopold of Albany, who was a hemophiliac. And he married, and they had a daughter, it looks like, who was a carrier. And that daughter married and had a son, Rupert, who ended up with hemophilia. So you can kind of follow it through the family tree. So that's X-linked inheritance, and I just wanted to add that on because, again, I didn't cover it in the previous video, but it is an important concept to know. So, all right, see you in the next one.